A couple notes on osteoporosis, how bad it is. 2 million Canadians have been diagnosed, and there's many that haven't and are undiagnosed.
Yes,
It
yes,
costs 2 billion a year in healthcare costs.
yeah, yeah, that
25%
part.
of women over 50 have osteoporosis. They can lose 2 to 5% of their bone mineral density in just a year.
Your doctor tells you to take a calcium because you have low bone density. You're not sure which calcium to take. You've heard it can harden your arteries. You're not sure what to do. On today's episode, I want to give you a clear path on what form of calcium to take. With the help of Darren Wright, the owner of Certified Naturals, together we are going to talk about all things bone health and which supplement is best for absorption and to get the best results. Today I'm joined with Darren Wright. He is the owner of Certified Naturals, and Certified Naturals is a Canadian company, and they have wonderful products. And Darren, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you for having me, Vicky.
You're welcome. Yes. So we're going to dive into bone health. Now, I know Certified Natural has many different products, but today we are going to talk about all things bone health. And you have a great product, which I really love. There's lots of different sort of calcium products on the market, coming from different sources like rocks or cow bones. But Certified Natural, they have a product called Calcium Magnesium Plus K, but it's derived from Aquamin, which is a red algae from Iceland. Can you talk a little bit about why the red algae?
Well, years ago, I think it was back in 2011, you being, a registered health nurse, you probably heard some of the studies that came out that talked about calcium concerns. And what they were finding in some of the studies, while they were looking for bone health, at the same time, they were seeing that women who were taking large amounts of calcium were actually at higher risk for coronary events. And it
Mhm.
seemed that that calcium that they were taking as supplements was not getting to the bone. It was ending up in the soft tissue, such as the arteries. And when calcium gets in the arteries, you've got less room for blood to go through. You've got a stiffening of the arteries, so it can't expand and contract with the beating of the heart. And you have that risk that if any of those calcium deposits break off, they can actually cause a stroke. So there was a lot of concern, and I'm sure you saw it with your clients that, oh my goodness, all of
Yeah,
a sudden I can't take calcium. What
yeah,
do I take? Because
yeah.
I'm concerned about my bone health because osteoporosis is such a big issue in Canada, of course,
Mhm,
especially with women as they head into menopausal years.
mhm.
So with that, if you start to look at the sources of calcium, as you mentioned, most calciums on the market and the ones that would have been in those concerning studies would have been sourced from limestone or
Right.
rock. So these are just calcium-based supplements just from a single source. They don't have any other minerals in them. They're only calcium. And the researchers in those studies said, don't take supplements. There's higher risk for these cardiovascular concerns.
Yeah.
So instead, get your calcium from your food because they did not see those same type of results when people were getting their calcium through their food. Of course, that's easier said than done. I'm sure you've seen that so many clients cannot take enough calcium from their
Well,
diet.
and you don't absorb it. I know if it's from rocks or caltrate, like it's rock, so your body doesn't absorb it. So yeah, it has to go somewhere so it stays in your, like you said, soft tissue.
Exactly. Yeah. So that brings up, okay, get it from your food. That sounds great, but how to do that to get enough
Yes.
calcium?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times food sources can be low. And, there's also allergy concerns for certain people with dairy because
Hmm.
dairy seems, tends to be one of the better sources of calcium. So when you look at food sources, certain plants do provide calcium. And in particular, you mentioned Aquamin, and Aquamin is actually this plant here.
Oh, very cool.
This is a red algae. It's not red right now because it's totally calcified. But this plant, when it's living, grows in Iceland, grows
Mm.
off the coast in the shallow area because it does have to get sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a coral reef.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It looks exactly like coral, and
yeah.
they sometimes call it a coralline algae.
Mm. Okay.
So its the Latin name is Lithothamnium calcareum, and this plant grows for about 3 to 5 years. It takes in seawater during that time until it totally calcifies and looks that, this beige type color. And then the waves break it up in the shallows and it gets built up in deposits in the fjords in Iceland. And that's where they harvest it. And what they found is that this particular plant, once it's calcified, it is 35% elemental magnesium, has about 2.5% magnesium, and then you've got 72 other minerals
That's
in that
amazing.
material. And that's because it's taking it from the seawater and then eventually builds up that the plant does totally calcify. So that material is naturally available and it's great as a supplement because it really is a food source and a plant
Right,
source of
right.
calcium.
And again, we absorb it because it's food, and that's what I read. There's 74 minerals because it's not just calcium to build your bones, but we need all those minerals. And it said
Exactly.
13 key minerals for bone health within those 74 minerals.
Exactly.
And when we give the body the right nutrients, it knows what to do with it and it knows where to put it.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So now the Aquamin, I mean, who discovers this stuff? That's amazing. Now, so like I was saying, we have a lot of women that come in perimenopause, menopause, menopausal, osteopenia, osteoporosis. They're going on Actonel, Fosamax, Prolia. Now, would you say to take this certified natural calcium, magnesium plus K, taking that together with these pharmaceuticals as well? Or like, will it help or not help or
Certainly always consult your
pointless?
health professional, but
Right.
most cases, prescription drugs like Fosamax, they do recommend taking calcium together with it because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, we don't produce calcium in our body. We need to get it from outside, from our diet. So calcium is generally recommended together with these drugs.
Okay. Good. So now it comes in liquid. So I have one here and I am my own guinea pig. So I'm testing myself. I'm going to do it for a year and then I'm going to go get another bone density. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, excellent.
And yeah, to see the improvement. But you know what I like about it? It tastes good for one, but it's 1 tablespoon. So some of the calcium that you have to take, if you're diagnosed with osteopenia, osteoporosis, you need to take more calcium. And I tell people, well, on the label it says 6 pills, and it's 2 in the morning, two, lunchtime, two at dinner time. And they're like, no, I don't want to take that many pills. But 1 tablespoon is enough with this, like for osteopenia, osteoporosis.
Well, generally, we recommend 1 tablespoon twice per day.
Okay. All right.
Reason being,
Okay.
a lot of women, of course, they're coming in probably to your location. They're saying, oh my goodness, I need 1,500 milligrams of
Right.
calcium
Yes.
or
Yes.
1,200 milligrams. Well, a lot of times people on average are getting about 400 to 500 milligrams of calcium through their diet anyway. They may not
Hmm.
know it. They are certainly getting some. So you're wanting to supplement. You're not necessarily wanting to get all your calcium from a supplement, a pill, or
Hmm.
a liquid.
Hmm.
And that's why most of the clinical studies that have been done on Aquamin, it's not
Hmm.
just a nice natural story of this harvesting this material in Iceland, but
Yeah.
it's actually clinically studied. They have 25 clinical studies on this material, and most of them have been done at 800 milligrams a day,
Okay.
not 1,500, but 800. So with the liquid that you mentioned, it's 400 milligrams twice
Hmm.
per day.
Okay.
And of course,
And
that makes sense because, as you may know, once you get over about 500 milligrams of calcium in a single dose, absorption really drops off.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So better
mm-hmm.
to take an amount that makes sense so it's
Yeah.
going to get in the bones
Mm-hmm.
and not hang around in your arteries.
Right.
That correct dose. Certainly, some people, if they are getting a lot of calcium in their diet, they may only want 1 tablespoon a day. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
be enough to
Mm-hmm.
top them up. If they know they're not getting a lot of calcium in their diet, then you're likely
Yeah,
to
you
recommend
need
two.
to supplement for sure. Yeah. And our sedentary lifestyle these days too, we're not as active. We might think we're active, but we're not. And like the weight resistance for bone health. And I was just gonna say the tablets as well, or the capsules, it's half the dosage, but the capsules have zinc in it, just 2.5 milligrams of
Yes,
zinc, but the liquid doesn't. So I'm not sure
correct.
why that is. But
Mostly actually for flavor, Vicky,
oh,
because zinc, when you put in a liquid, is
true.
quite
Yeah.
nasty tasting.
Yeah.
Now, your
Yeah.
clients would be getting some zinc in the
Hmm.
liquid because, as we said,
Okay. True.
there's
Yeah.
74
Yeah.
minerals in
True.
Aquamin. We
Yeah.
do fortify some of the minerals, putting in a bit extra based
Hmm.
on what human
Hmm.
needs are.
Hmm.
And in the case of the capsules, we do add the zinc because, of course, no one's going to be tasting that.
Yeah, and what I was going to say about the liquid as well. So if people are traveling, they can't always take the liquid and the capsules. So it's two a day. And if you're wanting that 800, so two and two. And you're
Yes.
right. I was always taught that your body only takes in so much calcium, so 500 milligrams at a time. So when you're saying, they say 1500, they're like,
Yeah.
and they're thinking they're taking all these pills. And that's why I say break it up throughout the day because you're wasting your money and your body's not absorbing it properly anyway. So, no, this is very convenient. And now I was thinking about this too. So, absorption, and I
Yeah.
have a friend that is celiac and she fractured her bone and it's not healing. And it's been about 6 months. I was telling her protein and I was mentioning this to her to start taking it. Because especially for a celiac, they don't absorb minerals because there's a lot of damage to the villi. And so this would be a great thing for them to do too. Do you want to
Well,
comment on
and
that?
perhaps even more than you think. You're on
Yeah,
the right track.
yeah.
But what they found is that not just for bone health, but the Aquamin is so beneficial also for joint health and also for digestive health. And with digestive health, they've supplemented people with Aquamin, and they've found that if you compare it against, before you're supplementing, it actually increases the numbers of the good bacteria. It's
Oh,
acting
interesting.
almost like a prebiotic. So it's very good for digestive health. And a lot of their more recent studies, whereas they started off with joint studies and then went to bone studies, most of their recent studies actually have been on digestive health.
Interesting. Wow, wow. And liquid over capsule, or it's across the board, like either one?
Either one would
Yeah.
certainly help. When someone asks, should I take the liquid or the capsule? We're pretty ambivalent about that because with the capsules, we test every batch to make sure that those vegetable source capsules break down within a
Mm,
half an hour. But in practice, they usually dissolve in about 7 minutes in the stomach. So it's very quick.
mm,
But one of the added benefits of the Aquamin is that it is very good at reducing acid in the body. So we want to have an alkaline forming environment for bone health because acid certainly is not a good environment for bone growth in the bone growth cycle. But an interesting side benefit is because it's so good at reducing acid, it is good as an antacid, especially as the liquid. So if you have
mm.
clients that have issues with acid reflux, they'll find that the Aquamin, especially as a liquid, is tremendous because it coats the esophagus and really reduces that acid. And in fact, in Europe, the original use of this material was not for humans. It actually was used in the dairy industry. They would feed it to cattle along with their feed, and cattle build up a lot of acid as they're eating and so forth, and it hurts their
Mhm.
milk production. But so traditionally, farmers would add regular calcium carbonate from limestone to the
Yeah.
feed. It would help reduce acid and increase milk production. What they found with the Aquamin, if they used that instead of regular calcium carbonate, it reduced acid many more times and made the cattle more productive. So taking that back for human use is good for the alkaline forming environment, but also just for practicality for reducing stomach acid, which can be dangerous to the esophagus. It is tremendous. And we know that Tums, which is
Yeah.
calcium carbonate, is sort of
Yeah.
the go-to for
Yeah.
reducing acid. So this is a Tums plus, really.
Well, and I was going to say better quality milk too at the end
Yeah.
result.
Yeah.
Now, prior to us coming to record here, and you were telling me about the different ingredients and how you, so like the calcium, magnesium, how you test it. It's all human tested, the vitamin D, how you source it. Do you want to elaborate on that again?
Sure. The whole certified naturals brand is made in Canada. So we bring materials to Canada. We, as you say, only select materials that have human clinical studies on them. And we usually like to have multiple studies. And then we formulate the products with the same potency. We're just talking about the Aquamin, 800 milligrams a day is what they've found to be beneficial in most studies. So that's what we formulate to.
Okay.
And as in terms of sourcing, we're looking for the best materials around the world. But when we bring them into Canada, we do all the quality control on that raw material and then again on the finished product to make sure it's safe for human use, testing for microbial contamination, testing for heavy metals. In particular, just to go back to Aquaman, that is so important. That's the real key. Because whenever you get any raw material that is sourced from the ocean or from the sea, we of course have a lot of human-made pollution in the
Yes.
water.
Yes.
So you want to be sourcing from a very clean area. And in this case, it's sourced from Iceland. Iceland is pristine conditions. It's a volcanic island far off the coast of Europe, way away from any industry. Iceland is very underpopulated, only 350,000 people on the entire island. And it's harvested up in the north area where there's almost no population. The water is clean and beautiful. And about 10 years ago, we had the extreme pleasure to go out to Iceland and witness the harvesting of this material. And the conditions were just pristine.
Is
So
it a controlled environment though, where it is, or it's just wild?
it's
Or
wild.
wild? Okay.
This is not something that you could farm. As I
Okay.
mentioned, it grows in the shallows in
Okay.
Iceland, then calcifies, gets brought by the waves into
Yeah.
the bottom of the fjords,
Yeah.
and that's where they actually do the harvesting. So they don't touch the live material. So it's
Okay.
very sustainable.
Right. Now, this also has vitamin K. So, vitamin D, vitamin K, we all know that for bone health. But if the Aquamin has all these minerals, wouldn't we not need the vitamin K or the D on top of it?
Good question. So yes, the Aquamin has the 74 minerals. It's really a food source.
Mm-hmm.
But we do know for bone health, vitamin D is so important. They've done some of the clinicals on Aquamin together with vitamin D, and they've seen, yeah, yeah, absolutely they work very well together. And consumers are looking for D3, especially here in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're starting to head towards the spring and summer, so we will get more sunlight, but our population is so low in sunlight because we have to cover up and the tilt of the earth in relation to the sun during winter. We just cannot get enough vitamin D, and it is so important for bone health. So we do fortify it with vitamin D from lichen source. So
Mm-hmm.
the capsules themselves, the entire formula is suitable for vegans. And then in terms of K2, exactly as you said, we don't feel there's such a need for K2 being in the formula. K2 is important because, with vitamin D, you have D helping the body absorb calcium, but it doesn't tell it where to go. So
Mm-hmm.
if if you're, not
Yeah.
using the right calcium, it still could end up in the soft tissue where you don't want it to be. whereas K2 is really the traffic director and it's directing it towards the bones versus the soft tissue and can even help get it out of the soft tissue. So we do add the K2. Number one, a lot of consumers have been taking other forms of calcium for years, so you want to help protect them from the dangers of calcium. Number two, consumers are looking for K2. They are supplementing with it.
Yeah.
So we thought it was natural to add it to our formula. But we don't use a huge amount. Here in Canada, the limit for K2 is 120 micrograms per day, as per Health Canada. And of course, every supplement that does contain K2 in Canada does have to have a caution on it to talk to your healthcare practitioner if you are on blood thinners.
I was
And of
going to
course, we
ask you
know
that. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
far too many Canadians that are on blood thinners,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it is a real concern. So we do have that caution on our products
Okay.
to
Yeah.
check with your healthcare practitioner,
Okay.
but the amount we use is 40 micrograms a day.
Okay.
And what we found is in some of the recent studies, and there's a great book out there, I think it's called Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox,
Yes.
that talks
Kate
about
Rayom.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great book. I
Yep.
highly recommend it,
Yep.
where she highlights some of the recent studies that say not only is it not harmful to take K2 with blood thinners, but it can be beneficial if you
Mm,
stick to a reasonable amount, 50 micrograms or less.
right.
So certainly
Okay.
always consult with your doctor, but that is some of the emerging research that it's actually beneficial.
So if you're taking the certified natural calcium magnesium plus K, then you don't have to do extra K, or you wouldn't have to buy extra K if it's all there in the supplement, depending what
Depends,
the individual's doing
yes,
too
depends on the
as well.
individual.
Yeah.
For the average person, I think that amount, 40 micrograms
Yeah.
per day is going to
Would
be
be enough.
very suitable and safe. But certainly if you're someone that knows through your naturopath or your
Hmm.
practitioner that you need
Hmm.
more, then there are a lot of K2 only supplements that you can
Hmm.
certainly fortify
Yeah.
as
Well, and it's absorbable. So you're going to get all that benefit with it as well. So yeah.
exactly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
So do you have any testimonies so people like osteoporosis, osteopenia that, and like I said, I'm going for my bone density in a couple of months, but that have reversed it. I mean, lifestyle is a big key, diet is another big key. You can't just supplement a poor diet
Right.
or a poor lifestyle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Years ago, we ran a promotion for a limited time. You have to be careful with such
Yeah.
promotions, but we said if you take this product and you have a bone scan before you take it and take it for a full year, if you don't see improvement, you'll get your money back. So
Right.
we tried that as a promotion. And interestingly, there was few people that took it up because it does
Yeah.
require some diligence of
Yeah.
getting the proper testing done. But we did have a woman from BC. She tried it and she called up and she was very angry. She said, I took this for a year and I still have osteoporosis, and my doctor said it didn't do anything. And we said, okay, well, please send us in your test results. We'd like to take a look at them. And we took a look at them, and of course, we were never claiming that it's going to eliminate
Yeah.
osteoporosis. That's not possible. What you're wanting to do is slow down bone loss and get things
That's right.
stabilized.
Yeah.
That could be possible, but to bring someone who's osteoporotic to non-osteoporotic, that is, of course, not going to be possible. But when we looked at the studies, it's certainly said, yes, she's osteoporotic, which is no surprise. We didn't expect that to change. But when we looked at the three areas of the bones that were scanned, she improved in two out of three of them. So she had a
Mm.
net increase in bone density. So once she found that out, she realized that, oh my goodness, like, okay,
Yeah.
I now I understand. I still have osteoporosis, but this actually did help to increase my bone mineral density.
And you have
Yeah,
to stick with it. And, it's not just 1 year or 6 months, but like it's over a course of a number of years, and you need to
Yes.
stick with it. And like I was saying, diet and lifestyle have to be key as well. And, I just spoke with their fitness instructors, and they do it's called Bone Fit, and they're teaching women to stay balanced so they don't fall. And
Yes.
I think that's another part of the lifestyle is to, stand on one foot for a while, keep your balance. So yeah, yeah. So it's a process. It's not like a miracle that it's going to change everything, but you're taking steps in the right place because when women, break their hips or it's debilitating and you're
Absolutely. And
relying
life
on other
threatening.
people, the quality of life.
Life threatening.
Yeah, yeah,
A
it can
couple
be. Yes.
a couple notes on osteoporosis, how bad it is. 2 million Canadians have been diagnosed, and there's many that haven't and are undiagnosed.
Yes.
It
Yes.
costs 2 billion a year in healthcare costs.
Yeah. Yeah, that
25%
part.
of women over 50 have osteoporosis. They can lose 2 to 5% of their bone mineral density in just a year, which is
Yeah. Can you look back, say 20 years ago, and were the numbers that high? Or it's only in the last, I'm going to say 20 or 30 years that we're seeing this number increasing? Like, because they didn't test for like bone density, I'm going to say 25 years ago. When did they start testing bone density?
probably fairly recently.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
technology has been there
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
accurately
Yeah.
measure and
Yeah.
monitor. And
Yeah.
luckily, I think here in Ontario, women are allowed, was every 2 years, they're allowed a
I believe so.
scan
Yeah.
that's
Unless
covered.
there's a concern.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that's tremendous. That really
Yeah,
helps
depends on your
people
age
evaluate
too,
where
I
they are.
think. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, and the other thing people don't realize, like your teeth, like the bone structure of your teeth too, and you can start losing your teeth because of the bone structure of your jaw as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're chewing, and yeah, so it's all related. Yeah.
And
So do you have any last encouraging comments for our listeners? And like I said, it's mostly like perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal women that are trying to, improve their health and, however they can.
absolutely. I think you mentioned it earlier, Vicky. It's a lifestyle. Supplement itself is not going to be the whole key. It's a part of that. You've got to get the nutrition to the bones. It's got to get to the bones. It's got to be absorbable. You don't want it in the soft tissue, but you also need to be avoiding certain foods that are going to
Mm,
reduce your bone mineral density. You've got to stay active because that impact on the bones, that stimulates bone growth. That's really key and
mm,
important. And we know that, one of the statistics, I'm just going to look it up here, but astronauts, when they're in space and they
yeah.
have no impact on their bones whatsoever, let's see, they
Good
can lose
point. Yeah.
1 to 2% of their bone mineral density in just 1 month by not having
But
any
how do
stress
they gain
movement.
it back though when they come back to Earth? Like, can they gain it back
They
or
can do some, but in my readings, some of it is quite permanent. Like it's
that's
really
scary?
devastating to their system. So yes, they can get some back, but it really, and you think about those astronauts who had been in space
I
for
know. That's what I was
nine
thinking
months,
when you
like
mentioned that.
that's going to affect
Yeah.
them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
And then as far
goodness.
as menopausal women, again, something like a plant source calcium like this can be so important because they've compared it versus limestone-based calciums. And women, when they hit into menopause, estrogen, of course, drops
Mm-hmm.
and parathyroid hormone goes up. And
Yeah.
when PTH is high, that's sending a message to the bones to release calcium. So they're
Yeah.
no, it's not even about getting enough calcium, just trying to stop what you have from exiting the bones and going into the bloodstream. And they found that the Aquamin is better than regular calcium carbonate at reducing PTH. And if
Mm-hmm.
you reduce PTH, you're going to keep more minerals in your bone.
Oh, nice. So saying that again, women on Synthroid, low bone density. And like people are on Synthroid for like 20, 30, like long time, they should start some sort of supplement. Like if they got diagnosed with low thyroid, then they're starting to take Synthroid, they should supplement calcium. Or
Well,
I
really,
mean, that's something they have to talk to their
exactly,
healthcare
exactly.
practitioner,
Yeah.
but something they should be thinking about because often, and again, we don't think about it until we get a diagnosis. But you should be doing something now to strengthen your bones before perimenopause.
Well, exactly, because
Yeah,
it's a life cycle of bones. If you
yeah,
look at
yeah.
it over the years, it's building up as people are young. And
Mm-hmm.
for women, in between 20 and 30, that's the peak. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
you have there, that's as good as it's going to get. And it
Mm-hmm.
will drop as you age. It's a
Mm-hmm.
question of how much will you let it drop? And
That's
if you're
right.
going to get into
Yeah.
osteopenia or worse, osteoporotic,
Yes.
that zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So really, beyond people taking Synthroid, all women are at risk, so they really should be
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
taking
You need
calcium.
to do something. You need to do something, ladies.
Yes, be
And
proactive.
Aquamin is a good place to start because it's absorption and all the key components are there, all the minerals. And that's what I like. I'll say to women too that come and it's okay. You can do calcium, but it's going to make your bone hard. So if you do fall, crack, it breaks. But if you get minerals in there, then it makes it more pliable so that if you do fall, it might not, crack and break. And so that's like the worst
Yeah,
to try to
absorption is,
repair. Yeah.
yes, absorption is so important. And they feel that from the research, the reasons that Aquamin is so well absorbed is that combination of minerals, that it's not
Hmm.
just calcium, that it's because minerals do work synergistically together. And the other thing they feel is that if you are to look at regular calcium carbonate under a microscope, it's very flat. Whereas the Aquamin, it's a plant and the structure is like honeycomb. That makes it easier for the body to break down that calcium,
Hmm.
better to absorb. And also, as a nice non-side effect, it's less likely to cause gastric upset or constipation versus other forms of calcium.
Yeah, I was going to say that, and like you're saying, the esophagus and the acid and so on. But even like I call it a coral reef, what you showed us, and I always thought red algae was like these green sort of things floating in the water, but it's more like a rock.
Well,
Yeah,
not when it's
yeah,
alive,
yeah,
but what it does, its shape
like a
looks like
coral
coral.
reef. Yeah,
Coral they consider an animal. This is not
yeah,
coral. I think when they first
okay,
discovered it, they thought it was a coral, but then they found,
yeah,
well, actually it is a plant. And then yes, when it keeps drawing those minerals from the seawater,
yeah.
then it does calcify.
Well, and good to know our vegetarian and vegan friends can take it as well because I'm sure they need that extra nutrient.
Absolutely.
So,
Sure.
how did you get Gifford Jones to sponsor your products?
It was probably in 2019 we first launched the brand and we were displaying at the Vancouver trade show and it caught someone's eye, someone quite famous in the industry. I won't mention his name, but he mentioned it to Gifford Jones and said, "Hey, there's product out there that's very interesting." And it was our calcium magnesium liquid with Aquamin. And so this mutual contact put us in contact with him. And the thing about Gifford Jones, he is from the medical profession.
Hmm.
He's now just celebrated his 101st year, amazingly, and is still writing weekly health articles, which he's done for the last 45 plus years. But although he comes from the medical profession, he was one of the pioneers in terms of recommending natural solutions wherever possible. And that is his sort of common sense approach. Whenever you can, before you head into the world of prescriptions, where, yes, there's great benefits, but there are also side effects, try natural as much as you can. And he's promoted that for so many years. And he liked the idea of our Aquaman based product because it's natural, it's got a great story behind it, the harvesting, the cleanliness of it, but it's also combined with the clinical studies, over
Mhm.
25 clinical studies. When he's writing his weekly articles, he likes to combine the two, the science and the natural, being a medical professional. So probably 6 months after we sort of engaged each other, he wrote an article about Aquamin in the Toronto Sun, and caused a lot of attention to be drawn to the ingredient. And over the years, he has sort of picked out different things that he really likes, and he will write about them because he feels that, hey, this is something I want to bring to my readers' attention.
Yeah.
And we've worked together like that for 5+ years now.
Oh, great. Congratulations. Yeah, and he's celebrating 101 this year.
Yes, yes.
That's amazing. Darren, this was a great conversation, like so helpful and so much to take away. So thank you for your time for doing this. And yeah, like if you have any, I know I said last comment, but if you have a last comment to the last comment, feel free. Like if you have anything you want to encourage our listeners.
I think to take bone health seriously because
Mm,
it's such a big issue. I've had it impact my life where my grandmother, she lived into her 90s, great health, but she broke her hip and she passed away 6 months after that. And I
mm,
think they say that of women that have a hip fracture, I believe it's 80% don't
mm,
last a year.
yeah.
So it's it's about lifestyle, it's about mobility, but it's also literally about your life because it
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
really shorten it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to take it serious.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's never too late to start, and it's never too early to start. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for this time, and
Thanks so much, Vicky.
we will be watching for your product for sure.
Excellent.
I do hope you found value in this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you've been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis and what steps you are taking to strengthen your bone health. If you are enjoying these videos, give me a like, a subscribe, leave a comment. I look at all the comments. Every time you interact with the channel, you are helping it to grow, and it is very much appreciated.